Hi, this is Robert with Cruzbike, and today we're going to be doing a fit adjustment on a Cruzbike Q45. This video will give you a very good initial fit on your Cruzbike Q45, and then from there you'll be able to fine-tune as your riding experience improves and as you get comfortable on the bike. To make our adjustments, we'll be adjusting the handlebar up here at the handlebar clamp. We'll want to make sure we always have our handlebar nice and even and centered in the slider tube. We have an indicator there to help us. We'll also be adjusting our chainstay clamps. When we tighten these, we want to make sure there's a nice even spacing between both sides, tightening them to a similar tightness that you would do a handlebar clamp, about 5 Newton meters. We also have on our boom and slider some numbers. Once you have your settings set, you can keep track of those. It's important to note that they're going to be different if you have multiple cruise bikes. The same numbers will not translate for each bike because each bike is different in geometry and different in seat angle, and also different in crank height. We'll also be adjusting and loosening the pivot clamp right there at the top of the fork. And also when we tighten the handlebar clamps, just like the chainstay clamps, we want to make sure we have a gap between the top and the bottom. We do not want to over tighten these and bottom them out. All right, let's get started on our adjustment. If you have a Cruzbike toolkit right here, we're going to be getting out a few tools. If you have your own set of tools, you're going to be needing a number 4 Allen wrench. We're going to use that for the handlebar clamps and also the chainstay clamps. We'll also need a 5mm Allen for the boom clamp. And out of our Cruzbike toolkit, we're also going to use our little open-end wrench and our adapter with a 5mm Allen, because to loosen and tighten the pivot clamp we will need 2 5mm Allen wrenches. Using our 3 tools, we're going to loosen the handlebar clamp slightly. That we can just move the handlebar back and forth with a little bit of friction. We're also going to loosen our pivot clamp just enough so that we can move them back and forth. We're going to do the same thing with the boom clamp here, loosen it just a little bit. We're also going to loosen our chainstay clamps just a little bit. We want to have a little bit of friction in the system, but ultimately we want the system to be able to slide back and forth. We can extend our boom in and out here. That's how we set our X-seam distance. The entire unit also moves back and forth. That sets our handlebar distance. And then the whole thing can move independently as one unit or separately. We want to have a little friction in this system if we're going to be doing this by ourselves, so we don't have things falling to the ground. The first part of any adjustment is making sure you start with a seat angle and make our adjustments from there. When you change the seat angle, it's going to change your relationship to the cranks and the handlebars. So every seat angle is going to have a slightly different fit on the front end. I recommend starting with the seat in the second hole. We're going to make sure that our bracket is as close to a 90-degree angle as possible, and then tighten down all of the clamps. With everything slightly loosened, I'm going to close the quick release, not super tight, just enough to kind of hold everything in place. And we're going to have a seat on our bike and begin our adjustment. To keep the bike in place, it's a really good idea to give a nice squeeze of the brakes. Make sure you don't roll around. Make sure you're seated properly in the seat. If you have a friend to help you do this, it's much easier, but here we can do it on our own. The first step is to check your leg extension. Your heel, when it's on the pedal, should be close to fully extended, not overextended. Your foot should be at a 90-degree angle to your leg, and you want to push out on the boom until your heel is just touching the pedal with your leg straight but not overextended. And then the ball of your foot will give you a nice angle here as a good starting position for your leg extension. Now on the other side, we are going to test for our upstroke distance. Here we will have our foot on the pedal. We want to have a nice 2 inches of distance between the handlebar and our leg. Here we will move the pivot clamp and slider towards us, giving us a couple more inches. We'll reset our distance there. Hold the brakes. Check that upstroke distance again, making sure we have a nice clear area. And we're also going to check our handlebar fit. We want to make sure our hands feel nice and natural. I recommend having the handlebars pointed near vertical, straight up and down is a good starting position. Making sure our handlebars are nice and even straight across to the horizontal and also even between the clamps. We will then take our 5mm. We will snug up our boom clamp here. We will use our 2 5mm Allen wrenches to tighten up our pivot clamp. And then we will use our 4mm Allen to snug down our handlebar clamps, again making sure they're even on top and bottom. Making sure our handlebars are nice and centered here before tightening down the clamps. We'll double check, making sure our adjustments didn't change. And now we'll want to get off the bike and make sure we tighten the 4mm Allens at the chainstay, and also make sure we tighten the quick release. A second method for adjusting your cruise bike is using your actual measurements. If you know your X seam measurement, you can simply use a tape measure and measure from the center of the seat at the back to the pedals. So here we're going to take a tape measure. I know my X seam is about 42.5 inches, so right around the seam where the seat back meets the seat base, I'm going to measure 42 inches. If I need to adjust the boom in and out, I can do that. Make sure everything is snug. That's the boom clamp, pivot clamp. Now for my upstroke, I'm going to measure to the top of my leg from the ground, which is about 24 inches. I'm going to add 2 inches to that for 26 inches. So now with the pedals closest to the handlebars, I want to make sure I have about 26 inches from the base of the pedal to the bottom of the handlebar. Once I've double checked all my measurements, I can use my 4mm and 5mm Allen wrenches to snug down the chainstay clamps, the boom clamp, the pivot clamp, the handlebar clamps, making sure we have gaps between the chainstay clamps and the handlebar clamps, and also tighten the quick release. Once we have double checked that everything is secure, we are ready for a test ride. It's really important to note that the Q45 does have an adjustable seat back, and once you adjust that seat back, your relationship to the handlebars and the pedals will change. So here, if we put the seat in the middle position, and then later if we move it even further back to the most reclined position, these positions are going to change the way your arms interact with the handlebars and the distance that your legs have to have from the cranks. So fine-tuning your fit depending on the seat angle is really important. I always recommend starting with a more upright seat angle on the Q45. Makes it nice and easy to see where you're going. Really easy to ride, a lot of fun. Fine-tuning your fit is going to be a really enjoyable experience, and once you have it just right, you will really be loving your cruise bike. If you have any questions, please feel free to email us at support@cruzbike.com. Thanks for watching.